Any of you read the sutta? Okay. And did, well, it doesn't. I'm not going to read the introduction right now, but I might later if we have time, because it's brilliant. It's just brilliant writing.
That's what I thought. When I was reading it, I really could see how deep your understanding was in this sutta. No, I'm not just saying that because you said that.
No, and I wasn't saying it was brilliant writing as a joke. It's brilliant writing.
Yeah.
You only asked who read it the weeks I didn't read it. I read them all.
Yeah,
but just not this week.
Just not this week.
Well, if I have time, I may read it. It really is. Well, I think I'll get to it. And it actually might be even more informative after you hear the sutta too. But what it covers is the broad scope of meditation and how it applies. In fact, you could say this about all of the introductions to all the suttas. What I try to do is to put the sutta in the context that the Buddha intended, in the context of dependent origination and Four Noble Truths. There's a sutta from the Dhammapada, a chapter from the Dhammapada, where the Buddha talks about a wise Dhamma practitioner. And they develop two things. They develop an understanding of the true Dhamma in the next line after that, and they understand the proper sequence for developing, or the proper sequence or context. And I've never read that anywhere. It's kind of implied. If you're going to learn something, you want to learn the context of it. But in that sutta, and that's what the introduction relates to this, how to apply this sutta to dependent origination and Four Noble Truths. Dependent origination states, from ignorance as a requisite condition comes fabrications. And so the sutta is directly related to how to end fabrications through a right meditation practice within the broader framework of the Eightfold Path. In it, the implication of all this is, it's not the implication, the direction is that the Buddha taught one single meditation method. He taught it for a very specific reason, to deepen concentration, and for no other reason. And you'll understand that even more now. Because he noticed that the common meditation practices at his time, and he learned all the popular ones, he realized that they just contributed to distraction. They were used to establish the self in an imaginary or speculative non-physical realm. And of course, that's just continued fabrication, isn't it? And ultimately what the Buddha taught is that anything that can't be directly experienced in this human life is a fabrication, and it's a distraction. So I may read it later.
John,
yes.
I also got me, I was thinking about it during meditation, ironically, I'm interested when it's an appropriate time to ask you, once you do the teaching and etc., like where Vitakka and Vichara changed in the Abhidhamma to have it take on a different meaning of directed thought and sustained thought. And so when I read the sutta, the way that your commentary was really clear and more consistent with the original teachings, but then the Abhidhamma reinterpreted it and used it in a more a different way, and
in a magical way,
understand.
in a fabricated way.
And so that like later, let's do that later. Like I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how they switched the term, because I read into like the definitions of Vitakka and Vichara and their roots and all, like, so it's a, because contemporarily, well, and seen differently.
Yeah, let me get into it, but I will say that those using Pali terms, one of the problems is that any Pali word is open to interpretation. There's no one-to-one correlation to any Pali word, and that's led to all of this magical and mystical teachings within the Dhamma. And the Abhidhamma is a perfect example of a mind rooted in ignorance that has gone wild, and supported by a lot of modern Buddhist views, but it has nothing to do with what the Buddha taught. So the problem is that the person doing the interpretation and writing out the Abhidhamma, their minds are still fabricated, They haven't developed a level of concentration. So they're interpreting these Pali words in relation to the way they're thinking, rather and framed by ignorance, rather than framing the Pali words in the proper context. And so even doing all the writing that I've done, the rewriting or the reinterpretation or the retranslation, if you will, relates to exactly that. Presenting the written word, the preserved teachings of the Buddha in a way that is maintaining the context of dependent origination and four noble truths. And honestly, I've yet to find any modern writer that tried to do that. They all interpreted the Dhamma to fit whatever their lineage and view was. The clearest ones around today are probably, I mentioned them in the book, is Thanissaro Bhikkhu, a little Bhikkhu Bodhi, although he gets deep into trying to keep everything together, and a few other folks. But even then, as brilliant as these teachers are and translators are, they're still translating from a wrong view. I mentioned one, I don't want to say it again, but they're deeply influenced by the Abhidhamma, and so the Dhamma is different.
Yeah, that was what I was reading Bodhi's words on it, and feeling the same, like, oh, how do you know? Because they're so entrenched in that way of thinking. So
yeah,
anyway,
so we know
we
know that
I really appreciated your commentary.
We know by sticking to what the Buddha taught and not getting into these other speculative teachings. It's really just that. Thank you for bringing it up. This is the Rahogata Sutta. On one occasion, a certain monk went to the Buddha with a question. Upon arrival, he bowed and sat to one side. Great teacher, just now in seclusion, the thought occurred to me, and he's in seclusion, he's saying during his meditation practice, the thought occurred to me, you speak of three types of feelings. There is a feeling of pleasure, a feeling of pain, and a feeling that is neither pleasure nor pain, or ambiguity. And that's the three possible feelings that any human being can have. It's just those three, even though we apply them in limitless ways. We either feel pleasure, pain, or we're ambiguous about everything. And it's really that last that people are trapped in and miss their life. And it's that last, that feeling of ambiguity, neither pleasure nor pain, that is so agitating for many people, because they want to be constantly stimulated, chasing sensual pleasure. So that even when that ambiguous state arrives, we want to get out of it by something stimulating. Is that clear?
Yeah.
And so most of us live our lives within that ambiguous state. We're not excited and we're not upset. We're just kind of blah. And I hear that often from people as they're developing the Dhamma. They get to a certain point where they're applying it, their concentration's increasing, but their behavior now has to change in relation to the Dhamma. And it feels like, nothing's going on. The Dhamma sucks. It doesn't, there's nothing exciting here. Of course, that's just a phase that you're passing through. It's a phase of reconciliation where you're realizing what's really valuable in your life and what's not. But there's a lot of tension in there because you're letting go of things that you're clinging to. Okay, let me continue. Then you said that whenever feeling arises, they are all stressful. Think about the profundity of that statement. We think as human beings that it's a good idea to chase what makes us feel good. It's kind of like the game of being a human, isn't it? To always be moving towards what makes me feel good and try to do everything I can to stay away from anything that might take away from that. Of course, that's foolish, because life is simply made of pleasurable things and disappointing things. It's just the way it is. When our minds, rooted in I-making, insist that I want my life to be only one way, we're contradicting the entire life experience, aren't we? Because it can't be. We've taken control of something that can't be controlled, and we lost our minds in the process. Any feeling is stressful. And of course, the Buddha's talking about someone who is stuck in ignorance. An awakened human being doesn't react to any feeling. They simply understand that's a process of having a human life. In what connection did you say this? The Buddha responds, excellent question, my friend, excellent question. I have spoken of these three feelings of pleasure, pain, and neither pleasure nor pain. I have also stated that whatever feeling arises, they are all stressful. I have stated this in connection to fabrications. Again, this is why I keep saying the context is so important. To simply state as an authoritative teacher, do you know that every feeling you have is stressful, and walk out the door? It's the truth. It's true. In fact, this relates to Tuesday's and last Saturday's Sutta. It's a true statement, isn't it? But it's not appropriate to the situation. It's cruel. And so the Buddha understands that, but he says that these feelings arise because of fabrications, and that immediately takes us back to dependent origination. When I know in my state of ignorance of Four Noble Truths that this feeling that's arising, that in the past I would react to and maybe attach myself to it as wanting more of it, I recognize now from a calm and peaceful, well-concentrated mind, this is just a fabrication. There's nothing here. It's like foam on the ocean. And that allows me to stop chasing experience and stay well-controlled, stay well-concentrated.
John?
Yes.
I thought feelings that arise, if they're of the current situation, that's kind of okay because you're just but you're just doing like feelings arise, like a broad spectrum. So there's feelings arise from your own fabrications,
Yep.
which is incorrect.
Yeah.
Hold on, Laura. Let
And
Lorna
feelings
finish.
that arise because it's just getting cold in here, it's getting hot in here, or something, or whatever.
Yep.
So they're like, so you just kind of like giving a whitewash over every feeling. Well, some of them are correct. Just
Yep.
don't take it personal.
Yes. So that's the point. Remember that what the Buddha just said. Feelings that are arising from fabrications.
All right.
So he's teaching, but it's such an important question because our minds, a mind that is striving to continue maintaining itself, continued I-making, will take, and I see this so often, will take a very specific teaching and extrapolate it out to a way that, wait a minute, this can't work. But it only can't work in a view ignorant of Four Noble Truths, isn't it? You just saw it. You just realized it. Yes, the Buddha's teaching that a mind rooted in ignorance is fabricating their feelings. An awakened human being isn't fabricating their feelings. They're simply feeling it. And there's no I-making in it. There's no, I need this to be any different than it is. When I hear I just won the lottery, and when I hear my best friend died, but there's still a feeling attached to it, isn't it? It doesn't, the awakening doesn't take away the ability to feel. It enhances feeling, and it presents our feelings as they arise in reality, not something that will contribute to further I-making and further suffering. When the Buddha heard that his dad arrived, I kind of went a little too far with that. When the Buddha heard that his dad was dying, he got up and walked away to see his dad, 140 miles to see his dad. He felt what was occurring, but he responded in a completely appropriate way. He didn't get into how awful it is. How could he die? Why is this happening to me at this point in my life? This is the worst time that my dad could die. He just very practically got up and went to, and actually his desire was to be with his dad before he passed. So we could give him one more Dhamma teaching. So it was a great question, and you understand that.
I feel like what just happened with you two is what is happening in the sutta. You have somebody who's practicing, going to the Buddha and going, not that you're the Buddha, you're a monk, but you know what I'm saying. Saying like, well, I need to understand the context where you would say to someone, feelings are either pleasure or pain or ambiguous. I need to understand the context better so that I can deepen my practice.
Yeah, the Buddha's not teaching we shouldn't feel, that there's something wrong with feeling, but we need to feel from a mind that understands what feelings are, and don't use feelings to continue I-making. I mean, this is the basic kind of bottom line Dhamma, and a mind rooted in ignorance insists that what it's feeling is defining itself, and that's why we attach ourselves to it. That's why it's so hard to break that ignorance. That's why the Buddha taught an eightfold path, because he understood the nature of clinging to craving. And once I've created some type of ideology about myself in my mind, I'm bound to defend and promote it forever. And this is how we undo that. So what a great question. Maura, you had something you wanted to add?
Now, well, I think it was clarified because when you were, I thought like, because when you were reading the sutta, you were saying da da da, and then feelings arise, pleasant, unpleasant, ambiguous, and then fabrications, and then you said from fabrications arise feelings, and I get confused sometimes because fabrications, like with the last time we had brunch, you asked me a question. You said, "Where do fabrications come from?" And I'm thinking of mental formulations, like down the line after perception, da da da. But from fabrications comes the sixth sense base. From ignorance comes fabrication, sixth sense bases. And I sometimes think those fabrications are after we perceive pleasant, unpleasant. Like pleasant, unpleasant has hit. There's a perception, and then there's some thought about it.
Yeah, you're relating fabrications there to 5 clinging aggregates,
Right.
which
So,
are simply a description of the process.
yeah, and that's so sometimes I hear, like when I'm hearing it, I have to go back and go, oh, right, fabrications is the whole way down here.
Well, yeah,
That from ignorance, that fabrications is sixth sense spaces, and then feeling and arises.
yes, a good
Consciousness.
reference to is dependent origination.
Mm.
That's what gives you the whole sequence from ignorance.
So I think of sometimes mental formulations.
Well, I think that's the same thing as a fabrication.
Okay.
Because our minds are rooted in ignorance, we immediately begin to fabricate. I mean, ignorance means we don't know. And because we don't know, we manufacture or fabricate something. Another word for fabrications is corrupted or perverted. Not in a sexual sense. It's perverted. It's a perversion of reality.
Mm-hmm.
So anything that flows from that is going to ultimately end up in stress and suffering. The Buddha continues. I say this in connection to fabrications. Fabrications are impermanent. Remember what we learned about anything that's impermanent. It can't be me. This is not me. This is not mine. This is not myself. How could it be if it's impermanent, if it's always changing? It is the nature of fabrications to arise and pass away, to change. It is in connection to fabrications that I stated that whatever feeling arises, they're all stressful. Furthermore, I have also taught the step-by-step process of the cessation of fabrications. Simple instruction. When a Dhamma, now this relates to what occurs during meditation. When a Dhamma practitioner has attained the first jhana, speech falls away. He's also talking about internal dialogue. So we do this every time we meditate. The first thing we do is we establish seclusion. We come to wherever we meditate. We close our eyes, we close our mouth, and we take a breath. And speech calms, internal and external. That's the first jhana, folks. The reason why I'm saying that, and the reason why I think there's now 12 or 15 articles on jhana on the website, because there's such a misunderstanding of meditation in general, and especially these in Buddhism, these teachings on jhana, and they're almost always presented that jhana is something that only advanced meditators and a very few ever reach. This is a common practice. Everybody that engages in right meditation experiences this, and you all have experienced that first jhana, haven't you?
Even accidentally, right?
Even, yeah, well, but it's not accidental if we're engaging in the method. We're carrying the intention. This is what I'm doing. I'm going to engage in right meditation for the purposes of deepening concentration. And I begin meditation, speech falls away. That's the first jhana. Again, the reason why the Buddha teaches this is not to see these as achievements, but simply ever deepening levels of concentration. So that's the first level, isn't it? A mind that is constantly talking, even to itself, is not develop. You can't develop concentration, can it? So the Buddha says in meditation, the first thing you want to recognize is that inner chatter has stopped. And when it comes up again, what do? Well, we learned in the 4 foundations of mindfulness and the Anapanasati Sutta that we come back to the breath. And when we do that, when a Dhamma practitioner has attained the second jhana, directed thought and evaluation falls away. So what does that mean? It means that in our meditation, we begin by being mindful of the breath in the body, speech falls away, and now as my concentration deepens, I stop thinking in this moment about what I'm doing. And for most of us, that will only last for a brief moment, or maybe 3 or 4 or 5 breaths. And then we'll find that we're thinking about what we're doing. And what do? What did the Buddha teach us? What did we learn here? We don't analyze it. We don't try to figure out what we're doing wrong. We trust that an awakened human being taught us a right meditation practice, and we simply come back to it. And again, the context is important. Understanding the beginning of the Satipatthana Sutta and the Anapanasati Sutta. The reason why I'm referring to the Anapanasati Sutta too is that most people that claim, it's just another one of those things that drives me a little nuts. People say, oh, well, I'm going to teach Anapanasati meditation. There's no such thing as Anapanasati meditation. The Anapanasati Sutta refers to a long sutta where the Buddha uses a group of accomplished monks and nuns as examples of a accomplished Dhamma practice. And so many people will use that. Anapanasati means breath awareness. So the Buddha's using that as saying, this is the result of a breath awareness practice within the Eightfold Path. People take that one word as breath awareness and have created an endless number of breath mindfulness meditations. And they call it, well, it relates to what the Buddha taught. And there's very clear instructions in both of those suttas about how to meditate. And none of these suttas or any other suttas does Buddha teach to manipulate your breath in any way. So,
one question.
Yes.
So if I'm in my center, aren't I ambiguous? Aren't I being ambiguous?
Yes. Remember that this, again, from an awakened point of view, and you really couldn't apply ambiguity to it because you don't have the other extremes, but you're calm and peaceful. And that relates to awakening. The problem of pain, pleasure, or neither pleasure nor pain is only relevant to a mind rooted in fabrications. And that's something that, again, I mentioned it before, a mind that is resisting developing the Dhamma will create another fabricated view that's not referenced by what the Buddha is teaching. He's teaching this is what happens to a mind that is rooted in ignorance. A mind that is awakened doesn't have these experiences. So and I'm using you as an example. You're projecting your present state of mind to a future state of mind. Do you see? And there's no awakening there. The Buddha teaches to unite a mind and a body and keep it there. And so in that case, no matter what experience is occurring, it's simply what's occurring. And so if you're in a state that in the past you might have classified as ambiguous, is just your life. You don't need it to be any. Ambiguity or neither pleasure nor pain is only a problem to a mind that needs distraction immediately, that needs something to happen. And they're unfulfilled. A human being, most of the time, especially in our Western society, but it's really global now too, we feel like if we're not doing something constructive, we're not living our life or we're doing something wrong. Establish seclusion, Lorna pointed out seclusion is both on our mat and when it's developed properly, it's off our mat. So we live in the world in that seclusion, but we're not reacting to anything. Is that a little bit more clear for you? And that's an important, understand that when you start coming up, if you've truly taken refuge in the Dhamma, it means that you have some conviction. We're not taking anything on faith. But when you find your mind saying, wait a minute, what happens when, you know that you're speculating. And you're speculating because you're trying to find a way that this doesn't work. I don't want to get too deep into it, but the reason why teachings like the Abhidhamma and all other modern Buddhism has developed is because we don't want to face that. We don't want to let go of our fabrication. So we've created a modern Buddhist practice and other spiritual practices as a way to justify maintaining fabrications.
When was the Abhidhamma written?
There's no real way.
Relative. Like 2,300 years ago?
Well, there's no way of knowing when it was actually written, but it was brought into Buddhist practices between the first and the second council, and then integrated as a as a Dhamma between the second and third councils. And there's in my article on the Pali Canon, it explains why they did this.
Yeah.
And they did it as a reaction to the Mahasangha. I'm getting too deep.
No, I'm
Let me
just saying
finish this.
in a ballpark, that was like
Yep.
2200, 22 BC or something.
Yeah, it was 20, at least 2,200 years ago. I'm going to go back and read this again. This is the first jhana. When a Dhamma practitioner has attained the first jhana, speech falls away. When a Dhamma practitioner has attained the second jhana, directed thought and evaluation falls away. And again, there's that evaluation. This feels good, or what this thought is a pleasurable thought, or I'm really doing great in meditation, or this really stinks. In the second jhana, and again, this might be just momentarily, that evaluation falls away, and we're just learning to be present in our body.
This is the Buddha talking right now.
Yes.
Recounting the jhanas, right?
Yes. And has everybody had that experience?
And you're using evaluation as what they call like vichara, right? That's
Yes. You're placing value adjustments on things.
So,
It's good, it's bad, I like it, I don't like it.
and the word was vichara initially in the sutta.
I think so, but it's been so long ago that I translated it. Just to answer that question more, the Pali words to me are important to understand the proper context, but it's not helpful. Do you know why how to explain this? It's not helpful as English-speaking people to always be referring to a language that most people don't understand. Because when I say vichara and you don't understand it, you're going to apply anything you can to it, even though I might explain it in the next word. It's best to just, this is, if the Buddha was teaching today in this room, he would never use the word vichara, would he? He would say evaluation.
Well,
So
and the only
we can get
reason-
to, the point I make, we can get too analytical in that way.
Yeah, your point is very well taken and very well understood what you're saying. I think it's very valid. And I'm only, because I have heard a lot of Vitakka is directing attention, Vichara is when it sustains and then you become absorbed. So that I'm just trying to shift a little bit and follow the distinction and what seems to be more relevant to what the context in which you're
These
talking.
are the distinctions between the different levels of jhana.
So that's, I'm only for my own mind to kind of place it, I'm following and that's all. I'm not arguing.
No, I know you're not, but
And
I'm responding to you.
Genuinely
So
curious.
and so the Buddha's, this is a clear English explanation of
Well taken.
what the Buddha teaches. When a Dhamma practitioner has attained the third jhana, rapture falls away. So rapture is kind of an ancient term. Most people say, well, rapture, we're talking about the second coming or whatever that is in the Bible. That's not what the word rapture has. A lot of different meanings. In this meaning, it simply means a joyful engagement has fallen away. It's not a bad thing. It means that our concentration is deepening, and so that factor of awakening, joyful engagement with the Dhamma is one factor of awakening, one of the seven. It simply falls away in meditation. It doesn't mean that it's gone forever. In our meditation practice, in order to deepen concentration, that falls away. Everybody's had that experience, at least if it was just briefly. Yes, no?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so these are nothing extraordinary, are these levels of jhana? You all have experienced them. Again, the reason why the Buddha taught them is to keep our minds focused and to recognize deepening concentration. When a Dhamma practitioner has attained the fourth jhana, intentional or directed in and out breathing has passed away. It doesn't mean that we stop breathing. It simply means that we're not focused on it. A way that some people say it is we find that we're breathing, our breath is breathing us. That's a little bit too magical and mystical. It simply means we're just sitting calmly. There's no thoughts distracting. Lorna pointed out, I think it was a couple of years ago now, I still remember it, that it's like my breath is here and my thoughts are here. And that's meditation. Meditation is not the absence of thought, a trance-like state. There's no opportunity for insight like that, is it? And that's a painful thing to develop, I can tell you, because I've done it. Meditation is about not being distracted by our own thoughts. Thoughts are flowing. My breath is here. It's the same as having my heart is pumping blood through my body. I don't have to think about it to keep my heart going. I don't have to think about thoughts or be distracted by thoughts to know that they're occurring. It's a physical body with a consciousness that thinks. Why would I want to stop it? But I don't want to be distracted by it. Maura, do you have a question? If it's a comment, would you keep it till after the sutta? But if it's a question, please bring it up now.
Well, the question was that sometimes when there's a sensation of there's no breath, is that what it's referring to there? When you said the conscious in and out breath, could you just read that statement? And then I won't say.
When a Dhamma practitioner has attained the fourth jhana, in and out breathing has passed away.
Right, so you're still breathing, but there's not
yeah.
really recognition of
Yeah,
breath. Sometimes it
that's-
feels that
yeah.
there is no breathing.
Yes,
But you're obviously still breathing.
yes, yes. And again, we have to remember the context.
Mhm.
The directed thought towards noticing my breath has passed away. Of course, we're still breathing. The Buddha's not teaching us that you need to, when you meditate, suffocate yourself, because then you'll be free. And so we're just sitting in this, and we'll get a little bit deeper in it. This fourth jhana is often called a state of equanimity, and it is it's the experience of an awakened mind during meditation. For most of us, it doesn't last until we reach the goal. But would every one of you say that you've had that experience of equanimity, of not being in this moment, not noticing the breath? Everyone?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the fourth jhana. So congratulations. You're all accomplished meditators. I'm not kidding about that. It's important. The reason why the Buddha teaches all these teachings on jhana is so that we recognize that we're engaging in a right meditation practice and that it's bearing fruit, that we're developing it correctly. Again, think about the incredible wisdom and compassion of this man. He could have said, this is what you do to meditate. And again, left it like that. He could have spent the last 45 years of his life not being bothered. But of course, he didn't do that. He taught that you need to meditate as part of an eightfold path. And then he taught how to meditate. And then he taught what to do, what to expect, what to look for. It's incredible. Becky, you had a question?
It's really just a comment, so you want me to wait until? I just wanted to say really quickly. I don't, when you were talking about using the Pali words, of course, no one here understands the Pali words. And I don't really know very much about the Buddha and his life at all. But for me, having been taught by you for, I don't know how many years it's been now, the thing that makes me think that you are interpreting this correctly is because from every single sutta that you teach, there is complete consistency. And you are able to explain that with the same goals in mind and total consistency. And there's like a million suttas.
There's a lot.
So that makes, I think, makes it very valid. Your interpretation is very valid.
Thank you for saying that.
I just wanted to say that to you.
No, I do. I greatly appreciate it. Maybe I'll teach this next week in the Nagara Sutta. In the Nagara Sutta, the Buddha talks about this breakthrough of understanding. My breakthrough of understanding was just this, the way that I teach, but that it has to be in the context or the proper sequence as the Buddha teaches. If you don't understand the proper context or you alter it in some way, you're going to get lost. And that's just what's happened. If you don't, you won't get lost. You'll be able to follow an awakened human being's path rather than something that has been fabricated endless times over the years and still called Buddhism or spirituality or something. And that's fine. That's what's occurred. I don't have any, by the way, I talk about this. I don't have any aversion to that. I don't think these people are bad or wrong or anything. I do recognize that in relation to what the Buddha taught, they're deluded. But that's just the truth, isn't it? You know, you can call anything. I can claim to be a professor of Middle Eastern food or something. It doesn't mean that I am, but I can talk about it, can't I? I can talk all I want. I can claim to be something that I'm not, but that's just fabricated. So thank you for saying that. It is important to understand this in this proper context. When a Dhamma practitioner has attained the fact, now the Buddha is talking about deeper levels, no, that's not right, speculative levels of self-establishment that even during the Buddha's time were taught as meditative achievement. But the Buddha addresses it here to show that this is just another distraction. When a Dhamma practitioner has attained the fabricated dimension of infinite space, the perception of form passes away. That sounds like, well, initially, when you just read that, that's something you want to go after, don't you? But think about that. It's just another escape from the body, isn't it? And the Buddha taught to unite the mind and the body. So this is just another commonly speculated realm that people strive for as a Dhamma practice, when it is just that. It's just another fabrication. When a Dhamma practitioner has attained the fabricated dimension of infinite space, the perception of form passes away, meaning you've lost your body completely. But this is taught then and it's taught now. In fact, it's often taught that higher levels of meditation are able to realize the dimension of infinite space. When a Dhamma practitioner has attained the fabricated dimensions of infinite consciousness, the perception of the dimension of infinite space passes away. So we've gone from a fabricated place where form, we've established ourselves outside of our body, and now we've even taken that to a further realm. We've annihilated ourselves. Even the perception of consciousness is now gone. Do you see what we're doing with ourselves in a meditation practice? We're intentionally insisting that we lose our minds. And this is something the Buddha recognized 2,500 years ago, 2,600 years ago. When a Dhamma practitioner has attained the fabricated dimension of nothingness, the perception of the dimension of infinite consciousness now passes away. When a Dhamma practitioner has attained the fabricated dimension of neither perception nor non-perception, the perception of the dimension of nothingness passes away. And so the Buddha is describing a meditation practice where we're taking ourselves further and further in a speculative way. We can't do it in the real way, but out of reality. When a Dhamma practitioner has recognized and abandoned these qualities, they have attained the cessation of perception and feelings. When these unskillful mental qualities have ended, greed, aversion, and delusion have ended. Notice where the Buddha inserts that. When those speculative establishments have ended. There's nothing of value there. Furthermore, I have also taught the step-by-step process of the stilling of fabrications. The cessation of fabrications is recognized and experienced as stilling. That's my comment there. When a Dhamma practitioner has attained the first jhana, speech has been stilled. When a Dhamma practitioner has attained the second jhana, directed thought and evaluation has been stilled. When a Dhamma practitioner has attained the third jhana, rapture has been stilled. And when a Dhamma practitioner has attained the fourth jhana, in and out breathing has been stilled. Those are the 4 levels of jhana. Now, when a Dhamma practitioner has attained the fabricated dimension of infinite space, the perception of form has been stilled. When a Dhamma practitioner has attained the fabricated dimension of infinite space, the perception of form has been stilled again. When a Dhamma practitioner has attained the fabricated dimension of infinite consciousness, the perception of the dimension of infinite space has been stilled. I want to stop right there. Many of you remember the Dhatu Vibhanga Sutta, where the Buddha is teaching what actually constitutes a person. And he describes the 6 properties that describe a human being, and there's nothing else that we can describe a human being as. The 4 elements, earth, wind, fire, and water, this as as those four properties, the fifth property of space, just mentioned here, and the sixth property of consciousness. That's, if you look at yourself and look at every other human being, that's what defines people. So there's a lot in that teaching. One is the fallacy that there's no such thing as a self. The Buddha never taught that. He said this is what constitutes a person. And here he's saying that the dimension of infinite space has been stilled, meaning this fabricated way of looking at ourselves has been stilled. When a Dhamma practitioner has abandoned the fabricated dimension of nothingness, the perception of the dimension of infinite consciousness has been stilled, meaning the continued fabrication and speculative establishment in these non-physical realms. When a Dhamma practitioner has attained the fabricated dimension of neither perception nor non-perception, the perception of the dimension of nothingness has been stilled. When a Dhamma practitioner has attained the cessation of perception and feelings, perception and feelings has been stilled. When these unskillful mental qualities have ended, notice how the Buddha says that. All that speculative self-establishment in non-physical realms. When these unskillful mental qualities have ended, greed, aversion, and delusion have been stilled. We go through that process of recognizing and abandoning these things that are mere distractions. And the Buddha points out very clearly why we do that, why we create this speculative existence, non-physical, imaginary existence for ourselves, because of greed, aversion, and deluded thinking. And so we know that when we stop doing that, that greed, aversion, and deluded thinking has fallen away. Now, friend, there are these 6 profound calmings. When a Dhamma practitioner has attained the first jhana, speech has been calmed. When a Dhamma practitioner has attained the second jhana, directed thought and evaluation has been calmed. When a Dhamma practitioner has attained the third jhana, rapture has been calmed. When a Dhamma practitioner has attained the fourth jhana, in and out breathing has been calmed. When a Dhamma practitioner has attained the cessation of the perception and feeling have been calmed. The 5 clinging aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental fabrications, and ongoing consciousness. The Buddha is talking about, in the right meditation practice, the calming the aggregates. And what are the aggregates? The aggregates are the ongoing personal experience of dukkha, of suffering. We're calming directly by ourselves through our own efforts. We're calming our minds and bringing to cessation the self-imposed suffering that we bring to ourselves out of ignorance. Does everybody see that? Is that one of the most profound things you've ever heard?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I haven't before, but I don't know.
well, then I'll read it again. When a Dhamma practitioner has attained the cessation of perception and feeling. So again, the Buddha is not saying that we lose the ability to perceive what's occurring and the ability to perceive, but from a fabricated point of view, perceptions and feelings have calmed. When a Dhamma practitioner, when a Dhamma practitioner's effluents have ended, passion has been calmed. Effluents are really any fabricated thought, word, or deed, but specifically greed, aversion, and deluded thinking again. Passion has been calmed. Aversion has been calmed. Delusion has been calmed.
Compassion is greed. Is that what it is?
Yeah, passion is greed, desire, all of that. And this is my comment to finish the sutta. There is no direct mention here of craving for establishment in non-physical dimensions, as they have been abandoned by stilling the mind, leading to the cessation of fabricated perceptions. This shows that striving for these fabricated experiences results only in continued distraction, furthering ignorance of Four Noble Truths. That's the end of the sutta. Thank you. So that last commentary relates to this, and there, again, there's many suttas on jhana, and every one of them mentions this idea of attempting to establish yourself in your imagination in non-physical realms. Excuse me. Often called the dimensions of nothingness, the dimensions of infinite consciousness, infinite space. All of those are speculated, fabricated realms, aren't they? They're just made up in just our imagination. Nobody can experience them. They sound good. You know, I'm going to strive for the dimension of consciousness. Until you think about it, why would you want to be there? I mean, you're really describing a way of losing your mind. But these attractive ways of describing speculative non-physical establishments, it is exactly the same as imagining that you're something other than you are, which is a fabrication. It's the same thing. And so we do that in an infinite number of very subtle ways. I am the world's best meditation teacher. I'm the world's best baker. I'm the world's best car driver, whatever it might be. Or I'm the worst at something. Or there's something wrong with me because of some situation. They're all speculation. They're all in our imagination, aren't they? And they're always painful. What isn't painful?
The stilling of such.
Yeah. And how do we do it? Through right meditation. And again, the Buddha didn't teach this meditation. He taught an eightfold path. The broader scope of the eightfold path allows us to recognize and abandon these fabricated views. And in the eightfold path, excuse me. The reason why you hear me call it the framework and guidance for practice is it's just that. It provides the framework for an out-of-control mind to see things clearly. We don't go past right view, right intention, etc. Those are our guidance. That allows us to recognize what's a fabricated view, and it takes a well-concentrated mind. It takes the development of jhana in order to do that. Any direct, I'm not going to, it's 10 minutes to 10, by the way, so I'm not going to read the introduction. I would encourage you to read it if you haven't already, though. It's important. And if anybody has to go, you said you might want to go, but we'll go around the room. Good.
Yeah, that's what I think.
We're going to start locking the doors. So you can't. Greg, good to see you.
Sure,
this
I'm going
morning.
to take a while. I got nothing.
I'm glad you're here this
Good
morning.
to see you.
Lorna, good to see you.
I don't think I have anything either.
Wow. Okay. Laura, good to see you. She's got something.
No, it seems to me though that just that whole description is it's just letting go and abandoning each state that arises. It's not, I don't hear in that this striving for those establishments in those realms. I think as the mind, gets concentrated, those you have to abandon more and more. And the Buddha seemed to me to be saying, and it's in the context of all this, that on the night of his awakening, he let go of the, and then 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 the, and it says, again, like from the his old teachers, that there was still didn't take to the end of cessation. So I guess I don't never, like, even since the beginning of my Dhamma practice, I've never felt like I have some craving for some weird, esoteric realm. It's just, I think that it seems to me there's still levels that one just needs to let go of. Like, okay, the mind is really still, but there's something else going on there. So that would be my comment on it. It's just.
Yeah, so the Buddha teaches jhana simply as guidance and
Recognition.
directions.
Yeah,
Notice that this
yeah.
is what's occurring and that your Dhamma
Yes.
practice is correct.
Mm-hmm.
It's being done correctly, but it is specific too, that to notice these different levels.
Sure. No, it was a very, very good, excellent.
Jen, good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you.
Yeah, I just like how it's like do jhana in action. It's just apply, meditate, and observe cessation,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
develop observing cessation.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that.
Yeah.
And when the Buddha would say it's time to meditate, that's what he would say. Go and do jhana. That was his word that he used to describe meditation, because it's a concentration practice. Period. Thank you, Anthony. Good to see
Good
you.
morning. Once I hit only once in my life, but I hit a level where I felt like I was on, when you go to the dentist and you get gas, it felt like that. and it felt like I was going to have like an orgasm. And that was the one and only time in my life, and it felt so good, but it also felt very like I was crawling out of my body. Is that a genre, or was I just going nuts?
So it's
Yeah.
in meditation, you're saying?
What?
In meditation.
In meditation.
I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah,
Yeah, you know,
that's
I haven't
a
achieved that high level yet.
that's your body and your mind throwing up a distraction. That's all. You know.
Yeah.
And again, it's not. It's
I mean,
almost
I
like
didn't do it purposely, you know, and
yeah, no. And when it happened, what did you do?
I just enjoyed it, and I was like, wow, what the hell was that?
And then what did you do?
I kept meditating.
There you go. That again, to answer your, that was the proper sequence, because all kinds of things can happen during
It almost
meditation.
felt like I was lifting out of my body.
Yeah.
It was very strange.
That's
Yeah.
what all those things about floating yogis are about. It's that experience of the lift. I think. Well, maybe my fabricated mind thinks that.
Well, that's part of it. I mean, you know, you think about how did the notion of levitation come about to meditators? It's because they
felt
successfully meditated themselves right out of their body, and so it was a real experience. But
Yeah.
years and years ago, I used to be a TMer, and so we used to have a weekly TM class at my house down in the basement, and I never wanted to spend the $3,000 to become a siddhi, which is the advanced meditation practice, and you're not allowed to sit with advanced meditators in TM because there's special techniques, and so there was about 8 of us, and then 4 of them were in the siddhi program, and they would go and we'd have to leave the room. They closed the door. And one time I just had to see this. So I left the door open just a little bit because I got to see this, you know, I didn't really believe that you could meditate yourself up into the air. And so, and I opened the door just enough so I could see. And I'm seeing these 4 adults doing this.
You're kidding.
I'm serious. They're pushing themselves, and that was their, and honestly, I'm thinking about it. I'm not trying to make fun of them because it almost brings me to tears to think about that, because these were, you know, there were sane, normal people who were striving for understanding, and they got so caught up in it that they believed that there was some value in that and proof in it. Think about the eye making involved in it. It really is tragic when you look at that. So just to make the point, that's how far off we can get to want to leave our bodies instead of just the opposite. I want to be here. I mean, when I started understanding what the Buddha was teaching, I realized, you know, for the first time in my life, I can actually have a life. I can be here. Ram Dass wrote a not a great book, but the title was great. Be Here Now. That's the point. I mean, it's pretty confusing. It's speculative. But the point,
That was a good synopsis. Though.
yeah, he got the point though. Be here now. That's the key to everything, isn't it? And how could it not be? If I want to live my life meaningfully, mindfully, and successfully, I got to be in it, don't I? So anything that would take me out of my body is going to be stressful. It's going to be seen as pleasure, pain, or ambiguous, but there it is. So
I think it was because when it happened to me, I was on a retreat and meditating for very long periods of time. And I think when you do that, strange things can happen.
They can. Again, thanks.
And you have to abandon them, but they're all wild, and they're all just that.
Yeah, it's another good point. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people, meditators, that wrong meditation, that develop some pretty deep psychoses because of their practice. And that's not to say that everyone that does practice wrong meditation will. It was an underlying condition, but the underlying condition allowed them. I mean, they're really in some pretty bad shape. Well, it's getting late. Let me, before we get to the back row, let me ask Mary. Mary and David have joined us. I didn't notice it. Why don't you say hello? Mary? David?
Hello, everybody. Good morning.
Hi. How are you?
I'm very good. This is a wonderful sutta. I love what everybody said. I'll take noble silence.
I'm glad you
Have
joined.
a great day, everybody. Thank you, John.
Take care, Mary. How about you, David? David, do you have anything to say? Let's see how I do this. I can pick on him a little bit. I think if I do this, nope, That's not it.
Do you have a poker inserted into everyone's?
Yeah,
home?
it'll go right to David and kind of give him a little. Here's David. No, David's phone isn't.
It's somehow through the computer system.
Oh well.
You get a shock.
All right, David. I'm glad you joined us. Do you have anything to say? No. Okay. Mary, good to see you.
Good to be here. I'm going to go home and study this at home, but it's just remarkable the way he puts everything into context, and it makes you understand what is wrong and what is right about a meditation method.
Yeah.
And drive home the point of being here now. Basically, why would you want to not be with your body?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Becky. Good to see you.
Good to be here. This was perfect timing for this sutta because I got a little bit, distracted, and my meditation practice got a little off kilter. And then this past week, I've been putting forth great right effort, and it's paid off. And then at the end of this week, I get this sutta, and so it really drove everything, brought a lot together. So thank you. It was very nice.
Thank you.
Very nice sutta.
Can I put you on a spot? And if you don't feel like answering, just say no. It's okay. Could you describe the right effort that you engaged in? I think it'd be helpful for everyone.
I meditated immediately after brushing my teeth every morning.
Outstanding.
And
you're here
so
now.
I just sat down, I just sat down and meditated at that time with your little podcast for 30 minutes. And it was it made for a very good week.
Yeah. And you read this article and you came to class.
That's
All
right.
part of right effort. Good for you. Nick, good to see you this morning. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm glad to be here. I don't have any comments this time. Let me just say one.
Sure.
Okay. I always say I'm not going to have a comment and then I think of something. Many years ago, I was on my way to Europe for business, and I got picked up by Lindsay to go to the airport, and I got stuck in a snowstorm. And I'm stuck in the snowstorm, and what did I say? I said, this could only happen to me. And I said that out loud, this could only happen to me. Right? I got to get to the airport and
Billion years of evolution.
Finally, I was sitting in the car, and I'm Route 287, and all the traffic is sitting there with me. And I said, oh.
There are others.
That's just happening to me.
That's great.
And there are others.
Thank you, Nick. That's really good. And misery loves company, doesn't it?
The thing is, it's just so true.
It is.
That
So there's a category on the website in the drop-down menu on right meditation, samadhi, and jhanas. There's 7 or 8 other suttas that all present jhana in the same way, and they all talk about the importance of abandoning your imagination as trying to establish some type of awakened human being. We don't have to imagine anything in the Dhamma. So all we got to do is do it, and it works. It's remarkable. It's 10 o'clock, so I'm not going to read the introduction, but I would ask you all to. And I think I mentioned, maybe just last Tuesday, beginning in 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to, and over the summer, we're going to go through a series of suttas on the 3 marks of existence, and specifically to get into dukkha in a more experiential way, how it actually occurs to us at the point of contact. And not
The summer of suffering.
Yeah, the summer of suffering. And I think we're really, as a sangha, we're ready. This is something I've been wanting to do for a while. And I think we just really we've developed in a really remarkable way. And I think we can get in depth on what dukkha really, the experience of dukkha in relation to impermanence and the not self characteristic. So that's what's coming up, coming attractions.
Excellent.
Uh,
Excellent.
And we're going to do a few more on Jhana. And then I think in the fall, I was thinking about this, we probably will spend some time on maybe 8 or 10 suttas on Jhana, because it's what we do, isn't it? We do Jhana. So, and our retreats, the registration for our fall retreat is up and running. If you're going, please do it. Please register now. We'll finish with the Karaniya Metta Sutta, as we always do. So find your relaxed meditation posture. Gently close your eyes, gently close your mouth. And just take a moment again to become mindful of your in-breath and your out-breath. Setting mindfulness to the fore and doing jhana. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing, in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. Radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Thank you all for a wonderful class this morning. Peace. See you, Mary. See you, David.